الله أكبر الله أكبر.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Islamic Center at New York University podcast, coming to you straight from the heart of New York City. We're building an amazing Muslim community here at ICNYU where everyone is welcomed and respected no matter where you're from or where you're at. This is the place to be. So open your ears and your heart and come along with us on another life-changing journey. Bismillah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا مولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله. In the name of Allah, the gracious, the merciful, all praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the universe, the master of the day of judgment. I bear witness and testimony to the oneness of Allah, to His magnificence, His omnipotence, His might, His glory, to His being the creator and sustainer of all things, the giver of life, the guider of hearts, the master of the day of judgment. And I bear witness to the fact that Muhammad ibn Abdullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam is His servant and final messenger. May the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him and upon all those who choose to tread in His path until the last day. As Muslims, we believe that Allah has given to us a text that offers to us solutions, strategies to approach any ethical issues that we might be confronted with. You couldn't pick up the Quran and turn to a page in specific and see, guiding principles aside, a direct answer that would say, should I marry this person? Should I take this job? The text is written in a way that doesn't offer those specifics always, but can provide to you the opportunity to engage it within the form of an ethical framework to approach the dilemmas, the crossroads, the decisions that are in front of you. As a text, it offers to us so much, not just in terms of ritual and practice, which is there, as well as guiding principles on how to simply be. But where it gives to us those principles in ritual and something to do, it also gives to us insight into conviction, belief, theology, something to believe in. It gives us a sense of how we can adopt a character, something to embody, and tells us on pretty much every page that there's a world beyond this one that's waiting for you. May Allah make us people of Jannah. It gives us something to get ready for. One of the most important verses that the world is in need of, but most definitely that Muslims, as those who should be manifesting the teachings of this book, have to really think and ponder upon. It's quite simple and obvious in its meaning, but it's still something that escapes so many societies and communities. Allah Azza wa Jal, He says to us in His book, وَلَقَدْ كَرَمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ, that all of the children of Adam are dignified. That notion is there that you and I have to embrace this by our own subjective will and choice. Not somebody else's perspective, not what somebody else is telling you what they think. Fundamentally, who cares? But Allah Azza wa Jal is telling you definitively that every single human being has dignity, is elevated, deserves sanctity. In the course of the days that we find ourselves surrounded in, this blessed month of Muharram that Allah qualifies as being one of the sacred months in our Islamic calendar. And the Prophet ﷺ, he defines and deepens that connection to the divine by qualifying this month as being a month of Allah. And we think about those things that fall into this construct of being of Allah, a book of Allah, a messenger of Allah, a house of Allah. These are things that are not just things that are limited in their capacity as mundane, but from amongst those things that are already unique, they're given that much more of a station. And in communities around the world, Muslims are going to be talking about leading into these days, and on this day in particular, the 10th of Muharram, the day of Ashura, a day where the Prophet ﷺ was already fasting this day in Mecca. And then when he comes upon the Jewish tribes in Medina and sees them fasting and asks, why are you fasting on this day? And they say that this was the day that the children of Israel were freed from the tyranny of Fir'aun. This is when the Exodus takes place. This is, in some narrations, when Fir'aun is drowned. And Musa alayhi salam, he tells his people to fast on that day. The Prophet says, we have more right over Moses than you do. And he tells his companions to fast it as well. And you're going to have a lot of different Muslim communities that are going to be speaking about these days in light of those traditions, which those are things that we also will speak about and have spoken about and sent messages out about. But one of the things that you have to think of, because you are praying in this space that is not like many other spaces, and that's not beyond anything other than objective. If you take a simple glance at the people around you, most of the people that you are seated next to you do not share race with you. They do not share ethnicity with you. They're not from the same culture. They're not from the same country. The only people that are likely not in this Jumu'ah prayer today because they are in another room in the building next door are brothers and sisters who are part of this community that identify as Shia. And on the 10th of Muharram, the commemoration that they engage in, rooted in the tragedy of Karbala that we discussed last week at Jumu'ah, has them now observe different rituals and traditions on this day. Allah knows best. But a lot of masjids are people of the same race, the same culture, the same class, same language, same food, same everything. You're not in a community that's like that. And you can't see that now just simply as a platitude or a slogan, but thinking about it in the context of this verse, وَلَقَدْ كَرَمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ, what does it mean? How do you navigate differences that exist? How do you understand both intra-community experience, but also outward, that you are Muslim living in a non-Muslim city? There's a million of us that call New York City our home, but by no means are we the majority. And this verse is something that becomes imperative to reflect upon. وَلَقَدْ كَرَمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ, and to understand it from the standpoint of both theology as well as ethics. That this is not just a religion about do's and don'ts, but it comes to a place where it synergizes now what one could deem to be religious, ethical, spiritual, and theological, all overlapped with each other, not compartmentalized. So how do you treat people that are different from you? And especially at a time of the year when there's a glaring difference that in many parts of the world leads to not just we are going to respect each other and say that there's things that we do differently, but yields to deeper than just animosity and antagonism. It leads to just killing. It leads to death. May Allah protect us from these things. Can we have everybody move up, please? If you can come fill in the carpet in front of you. And I want you to think about this in two frames. How do we work across those who we share Islam with? And what does it mean to share La ilaha illallah and to not get in the business of qualifying somebody else's religious connection to the divine? The Prophet ﷺ, he tells us of his companion, Usama ibn Zayd, radiallahu anh, in numerous hadith, radiallahu anhuma, that Usama ibn Zayd, he is so beloved to the Messenger of God that when he is a child, he places him on his knee and he places his grandson on his other knee and he makes dua to Allah that love them as I love them. He is the son of Zayd ibn Haritha, who at one point is so close to the Messenger that he is also known as Zayd ibn Muhammad. And when verses are revealed saying you cannot assume the natal identity of any individual, Zayd ibn Muhammad goes back to being Zayd ibn Haritha. His mother is a woman by the name of Ayman Barakah, who is arguably the only companion of the Messenger of God who is with him from the time he is born until the time he passes away. That amongst the women who nursed the Prophet is this woman Ayman Barakah. She is a servant in the household of Abdullah, the Prophet's father, at 16 years of age. She's an Abyssinian woman. She's black. When the companions wanted to talk to somebody about the Prophet ﷺ, and not just the companions whose names we don't know, but the likes of Abu Bakr and Umar, may Allah be pleased with both of them, after the Prophet passes and they want to go talk to somebody about remembering the Messenger, hearing about who he was, they go talk to this woman, Ayman Barakah. Usama ibn Zayd is the child of these two people. There's no doubt that the Prophet loves him. When Usama ibn Zayd is an elder man, not in his 30s and 40s, at a young age, he is appointed to be in a senior role within the army of the Muslims. And they're in a situation now where he and a man from Medina, an Ansari man, they're taking someone on in battle. And as this man is going back and forth with them, Usama ibn Zayd, he raises his sword and is about to exert a fatal blow. This man says, La ilaha illallah. Usama ibn Zayd has seconds to decide what he's going to do. And he decides to take the man's life. The Medinese man, the man from Medina, he goes to the Prophet ﷺ and he says, this is what happened. We were taking this man on, Usama raised his sword, he said, La ilaha illallah, and then he took his life. He's asking, what do we do in this situation to get direct guidance from the Messenger of God? And the Prophet ﷺ, he asks him, Ya Usama, did you kill him after he said La ilaha illallah? And he says, Ya Rasulullah, innama kana muta'awwidha, that he was just seeking protection, O Messenger of God. Like how you say the ta'awwud, a'udhu billah. He was seeking protection, O Messenger of God. He says, Ya Usama, did you kill him after he said La ilaha illallah? And he says, Ya Rasulullah, he was just scared to die. In one narration, the Prophet says to him, did you open up his chest and look into his heart to see that this is the reason as to why he did this? And then he continues to ask him again and again and again, did you kill him after he said La ilaha illallah? Did you kill him after he said La ilaha illallah? أَقَتَلْتَهُ بَعْدَمَا قَالَ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. To the extent that Usama ibn Zayd says, I wish I had become Muslim after that moment, so I wouldn't have disappointed the Prophet in the ways that I did. That's what La ilaha illallah constitutes. La ilaha illallah. And to be able to understand this now from the standpoint that who am I to put a qualification on somebody else's Islam? We have other narrations where similar situations come up and Usama bin Zayd does something similar and now there's somebody causing great tribulation to the community. He comes behind, surprises, raises his sword. The same thing, La ilaha illallah. And he takes his life. The people tell the messenger, this is what transpired. The Prophet says, tell me, how did you take care of this person that was causing us so many problems? He gives him every detail that I came behind, I raised my sword. He said this thing of La ilaha illallah. And I took his life. The Prophet says, Lima qataltahu, why did you kill him? He says, Astaghfirli ya Rasulullah, that seek forgiveness on my behalf, O Messenger of God. He says, Ya Usama, كيف تسمعون بالله إله إلا الله فإذا جاءت باليوم القيامة, that, oh Usama, what are you going to do when he comes carrying that La ilaha illallah against you on the Day of Judgment? Seek forgiveness on my behalf, O Messenger of God. These are people who are trying to kill Muslims in a battlefield. You think for yourself, what little does it take to be able to buy in to the worst conceptions of the other that fundamentally becomes an entry point of elevation of the self in a terrible way. May Allah protect us from any arrogance by simply denigrating somebody else. To understand this individually at this time, imperative for many of us. It doesn't just translate into moments that exist within historical context in our tradition. There's a brother that I met some time ago in the same lobby downstairs that so many of you enter into this space to come and pray this prayer every week. And he had with him two people who are Muslim, one who is a social worker and one who is a lawyer. And they called me downstairs because he wouldn't go past the place where you tap your card and the doors open so you can enter to the elevators. They said, why is he not coming in? And they took me to the side and they said, he's scared. That he's an asylum seeker from Pakistan. In every masjid that he has gone to, he's had to pretend that he is Sunni. Because every member of his family was killed and targeted because they are Shia. And he's worried that now you know that he is not Sunni, what's going to happen to him when he goes upstairs? And so I called my brother, Sheikh Fayaz Jafar. I said, can you come downstairs and talk to this guy? And he talked to him, and he spoke to him, and he let him know that you're going to be okay here. There's a difference between difference of opinions and intolerance. وَلَقَدْ كَرَمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. You don't have to agree with somebody to respect them. But you have to be able to understand fundamentally accountability to the divine. And then the standpoint of what exists intra a community. The recognition when many of us in this room, Allah knows best, are likely those who follow Sunni Islam. We play a role when we have the blessing of diverse community to be able to understand that as our Shia brothers and sisters are commemorating these days of Muharram according to their tradition, you don't have to become somebody in order to have respect for them. But it's not your place to ever feel as if you have the authority to put somebody outside of the fold of Islam. Nor do you want to be the reason that a minority within a minority is not able to fundamentally do what it is that they are fully entitled to. Nobody needs our permission to be who they are. Because you add to the prevailing conversations things that, regardless of whether you think about it or not, Allah is going to ask you about it one day. Why did you let people speak this way about those that were different from you? What made you think that you could be the arbitrator of somebody else's Islam? And if you don't think these are tools of shaitan, you got to wake up. Because shaitan's acts were the acts of racism. They were the acts of bigotry. They were the acts of hatred. And Allah defines His beloved sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the Quran, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا لِلرَّحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. That we didn't send you except that you were meant to be a rahmah for the worlds. It's for everybody. Not just people who share certain things with you. So just think about it in these days, where a lot of other communities, they don't have to think about it. Because they don't have people who are black and white and brown. They don't have people who are Sunni and Shia. They don't make space for women in their masjids. They don't have people who are praying side by side, who literally make millions of dollars, and some who sleep on the street. But your community is not like those communities. When Allah gives to you something, you have responsibility towards it. And at the base, you don't want to be the reason as to why somebody feels like it's not a space for them. We think about this beyond now just Muslim to Muslim interaction, and thinking about it in the framework of what these days of Muharram seek to teach us. The commemoration of gratitude out of a fast to the divine by Musa alayhi salam, as his people have been emancipated from tyranny, is giving to us an indication of what? Allah does not stand with the oppressor. Allah stands with the oppressed. When Hussein ibn Ali radiallahu anhuma stands on the plains of Karbala on this 10th day of Muharram, there's no Muslim who can dispute that this took place, and there's no Muslim who says that it's anything other than an atrocious, horrendous act. The elevation is to the one that is being oppressed, not the oppressor. Don't be an oppressor. That's what it is. And you have to take a deep look. I have to take a deep look that understands that even where we are not the most privileged group across the board, the Muslims quite often, they're the wimpiest kid on the playground. But within the Muslim community, there's still distinct experiences. A lot of us that come from immigrant backgrounds, it might not have been you, but your family members who came before you, they chose to work with white institutions as opposed to black Muslim communities that have been here since the country was established. You have a responsibility in fixing that. If you sit here and you are Sunni in your practice of Islam, you are going to always be the majority in most communities that exist around the world. It should never be the case that because of you, somebody has to feel like they have to change their identity in order to belong. If you were born into Islam, you have no idea what it means to be a convert. You have to get to a place where empathy, love, compassion becomes these things. And usually, the people who are held down and oppressed systemically, structurally, but also just day to day, are not the ones that are in the majority, they're the ones that are in the minority. And that's why it's beautiful that you have prophets of God who were given kingdoms that were imagining anything beyond our capacity to understand. And they would still see everything that was under their dominion in front of them, and notice that a small bird was missing. This is where our Prophet ﷺ, who was the counselor, the general, the institution builder, every single thing, bore the burden of wahi on his shoulders. He still made the time to be able to ask about the woman who cleaned the masjid that was no longer there, and what happened to her. To see as to why the mushrik that would throw garbage upon him day upon day suddenly was not throwing garbage upon him. To go to the young boy whose baby bird died and asked, what is happening? There's responsibility when you might not still be the most privileged, but you have privilege over others. You don't just do because somebody can hold you accountable. You also do for those that can have no recourse against you if you don't do for them. That's what this deen teaches us. Just because it's the right thing to do. Respect is about consideration. These words have definitions. You don't have to believe what somebody else believes in order to respect them. And this stems within those who share with you theological belief in Allah, in His Messenger, in His book, in an akhirah, a shared qibla, so much more that is there. But our book also teaches us that we are not those who defame, mock, ridicule others for the beliefs that they have. You can read Surah Al-An'am. It tells you right there. You don't do it. You don't revile other people's theologies and their beliefs. And when you have mindfulness and strategy that goes into it, وَلَقَدْ كَرَمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ, that we have a recognition within our tradition that all of the children of Adam have dignity and elevation to them. That ethics also becomes situational. There's a man by the name of Sunan Qudus. He's part of a group of individuals known as the Wali Sangho. We were talking to somebody about this some days ago. He brings Islam to what we know as Indonesia today. And for centuries, Islam has existed there in multitudes. And when he comes into the society with his brethren of the Wali Sangho, the local faith traditions are ones that venerate and show deference to cows in particular. And so Sunan Qudus, he tells his people, we're not going to eat beef. He doesn't say it's haram. He doesn't change Allah's deen. Because just because something's permissible, it doesn't mean you have to do it. But out of a sense of recognition and respect for the people of his society, he said, we're not going to do this because of what their beliefs are. The mindset that's there allows also for a recognition of a deen, of a tradition, that culminates in part now to a part of the world that is said to be the most populated in terms of the Muslim demographics that make it up. But what becomes the catalyst of this? Respect for others, not disrespect. Tolerance of others, not intolerance. This is not a deen that teaches us to be motivated by the nafs in any which way, especially by a nafs that is compelled through hatred, bigotry, arrogance. So what is its relevance to you and I? We have an opportunity to show people how deep and beautiful Islam actually is. When you can get to a place and look across the room and say that anybody in this room could be somebody who I could learn something from, regardless of their skin color, regardless of their race, regardless of their country of origin, cultural heritage, then you will understand what it means. وَلَقَدْ كَرَمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. When you can walk on the street and get on the bus and you can say thank you to the bus driver. When you can go through the streets of Manhattan and check in on people to see how are things that are going. That I appreciate with gratitude the sip of water I'm going to have at the end of a long day's fast when there's a heat wave that is global, that compels me through this verse, وَلَقَدْ كَرَمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ, to think at the sunset, where on every floor of this building there are multiple means through which I could just fill myself with water. To forget about what anybody else is going to do, I'm going to go buy a box of these bottles and pass it out to every person who's sleeping on the street in this weather. I don't even have to say anything. The action is just going to show that there's a dignity that I see in you. That you're there. You're not erased. I've had people tell me, when I've shared the story of this brother who is Shia, asylum seeker, trying to come in here and scared because people knew he wasn't Sunni and that his family was targeted, say right to my face, I don't believe this happened. The same way when I came back from Myanmar and I was showing people in different parts of the countries photos and images of individuals, our Rohingya brothers and sisters, that are targeted in ethnic cleansing and genocide. Literally, I was at a university in Pennsylvania. Their entire student body was listening. Their president's office had invited me. I'm showing pictures that I'm in with these people. And an entire fraternity comes to me and says, we think it's all made up. How does it happen? When you're in a place where you have some element of power, you make decisions on how minorities function. And you can have that mindset that says that in just a snap of my fingers, I can erase an entire narrative and identity. What our deen tells us is we're going to stand in front of Allah. You can do whatever you want to in this world. You're just going to have to explain why you did it in the ways that you did it. And these are the moments that you want to start to think about that on an individual level. Embrace the beauty that is La ilaha illallah. Something that does not negate the specifics of a fully autonomous person. Nobody should have to let go of who they are in order to be in your presence. Where somebody might do it differently from you, you don't have to agree with them by any means. But you still have to have a fundamental respect, a consideration for their feelings, a consideration for their well-being, never intellectualize and justifying their struggles, definitively never getting to a place where it leads to assault, it leads to abuse, it leads to oppression. And that's what the 10th of Muharram is in the Sunni tradition, a day that we show gratitude, wherein oppressed people were liberated from oppression. You can't do that if you are part of oppression yourself. It's something we should think about while we have the time to do so. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروا إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله تعالى فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا مولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله. Tonight, inshallah ta'ala, we're going to be having iftar here in this room. Around 6:30, there'll be a halaqah before iftar for those who are looking for something to do. We'd love for you to join us today. We had an iftar last night here as well. The sunnah of fasting on this day is that the Prophet recommended to fast also a day before or a day after to distinguish from the fast of other faith communities. If you can only fast today, you should still fast today. And there's different opinions on some of these things, but do to what you can in your capacity. If you aren't fasting today, we'd still love to have a meal with you here tonight. And so join us if you can. And if it was something that you weren't aware of, I seek your forgiveness for not conveying it to you. And for next year, allow for yourself to already have it in your mind. That in the hadith, the Prophet is described as fasting more in this month of Muharram than any other month other than Ramadan. And this 10th day of Muharram was a day that he would fast very avidly. He had a deep eagerness to fast it. And like anything else that goes along with our fast, we have recommendations of voluntary night prayers, of being charitable. Allah gives us these gifts seasonally so that we're not confined to mindsets only in one month of the calendar year. And beyond the level of obligation, you want to do those that are recommended because it has that much more of a room for impact, because you're not doing it because you have to, you're doing it because you want to. You're doing it because you know that there's going to be a gain and a benefit in it for you. So allow for yourself to make notes and join us today for iftar if you can, inshallah. Inshallah, it'll be a gathering that Allah descends His angels into, a gathering of barakah, a gathering of blessing. It'll be that much more meaningful if each one of you is a part of it. Inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi ya ayyuha alladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. Allahumma salli wa sallim wa barik ala Sayyidina Muhammad في الأولين وفي الآخرين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم إنك عفو كريم تحب العفو فاعف عنا. يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلوبنا على دينك. اللهم اجعلنا من المخلصين. اللهم اجعلنا من المخلصين. اللهم اجعلنا من المخلصين. We begin this supplication in your name, Ya Allah. Beseech you to send your choicest salutations upon your most beloved sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. We ask that you shower your infinite mercy upon this gathering, granting each and every one who is present herein and our loved ones only the best in this world and the best in the next. We ask, Ya Allah, that if all of us are meant to be together only at this time, at this place, whether we are young or old, male or female, regardless of our race, our ethnicity, our social class, our country of origin, our cultural heritage, whether we are Muslim or come from a different walk of life, Ya Rabbi. If our individual hearts are meant to be in the presence of all other hearts that are gathered here, only at this time, at this place, then gather us all together again in the best of places in the world beyond this one. Increase us, Ya Allah, in all that is good. Make us from amongst those who take from the unique blessings of this month of Muharram that is upon us. Allow for us to always be those, Ya Rabbi, who stand with the oppressed. And never let us be from amongst those who stand with the oppressors, even if it means standing against ourselves and our own. Help us, Ya Allah, to always be from amongst those who choose choices through our hearts and never at their expense. Let us take from the true legacies of these traditions that we seek to adopt and honor from the fasting of this day, by understanding always that there is a much larger world in store for us beyond this one. Make us, Ya Rabbi, people who understand the reality that there is an afterlife. And let us be those who are given nothing less than entrance into your Jannah without any judgment. Ya Allah, make us people of your paradise. Help us, Ya Allah, to honor the gift of La ilaha illallah that you have given to us. To see it as a blessing, to see it as a ni'mah, to see it as something that we treat with the respect and dignity that it deserves. Let it be present in each of our actions, in each of our choices, in a world that is sorely in need of those who truly believe and manifest in all of their deeds that there is nothing worthy of worship except you. Help us to be reminders of your presence, the presence of your mercy, the presence of your love. Let us be those who act justly with others and not jump to demand justice for ourselves. Let us those who utilize the skills, the talents, the networks, the community that you have given to us to build for those that the world has quite often forgotten and left behind. And forgive us, Ya Allah, when we overlook the needs of our brothers and sisters, those who share faith with us and those who share humanity with us. Make us a means through which your creation always has hope in this world, and never the reason that people might find dread in it. Bless this community always, and let our strength be in a shared respect for one another. Let it be the foundation of a much-needed love that so many communities become devoid of. Let us not be those who simply think about ourselves and our needs, but let us always be those who think about others in the ways that you would want us to think about them. Help us to live by this verse, that there is dignity in all of the children of Adam, and make us those who never forget it, no matter what circumstance we find ourselves in. Protect us always from hearts that are not humble, tongues that are not wise, and eyes that have forgotten how to cry. Forgive us for our shortcomings and guide and bless us all. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين وقم الصلاة.
We hope you enjoyed our podcast. If you're inspired by the work that we're doing at the IC and want to help keep it going, subscribe to our podcasts, follow us on social media, donate to help support us at ICNYU.org, and most importantly, keep us in your continued du'as. Until next time, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.